a good team, you know. We're the best team, you know. We were great, man. United we stand, together we fall. I'm gonna fall for us, okay? You keep standing, pal.
An incredible story. They were called the Barbie and Ken serial killers. Homolka and her husband terrorized the community. One girl missing, another girl missing, a third killed. Tonight, attorney for the victims' families, Tim Danson. But first to Toronto Sun reporter Alan Carnes. Alan, it's amazing to me that this woman, Homolka, a serial killer, is set to go free next week. What the hey is going on? Three murders that we know of.
Well, in the eyes of the Canadian justice system, she is guilty of 2 counts of manslaughter, not of murder, and she is getting out of prison after 12 years for her parts in her husband Paul Bernardo's killings of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey, 2 teens from this area, and in the fatal drug rape of her own sister, Tammy Homolka.
Would you explain to those viewers that are not familiar with Homolka exactly what happened and why they have been called the Barbie and Ken killers?
Well, Paul Bernardo was an incredibly handsome, very attractive young accountant. When he met Karla Homolka back in 1987, Karla Homolka was 17 years old. Paul Bernardo was 23 years old. The picture-perfect couple. Paul Bernardo was, at that point, involved in the start of a string of rapes in the Toronto area. And then he basically coaxed Homolka and got her involvement in the kidnapping, rapes, and captivity of 2 young girls, Kristen French, 15, Leslie Mahaffey, 14. And before that, he got her assistance in drugging and raping her own sister, Tammy Homolka, who was only 15 years old.
And Alan, what about the video aspect of the rapes and murders?
Well, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka videotaped their rapes, not the murders, but the rapes of the victims. And these videotapes didn't surface until well after the February 15th, 1993 arrest of Paul Bernardo. Karla Homolka struck a deal with prosecutors for 12 years in prison in exchange for her testimony against Paul Bernardo at his trial. The videotapes surfaced about 17 months later when Paul Bernardo's first lawyer quit the case. And then prosecutors struck a deal with Homolka to not prosecute her after another rape came up on the videotapes, the rape of a girl who was known as Jane Doe, who was also 15 years old at the time.
You know, to Daniel Horowitz, the defense attorney sat on these videos of these girls, schoolgirls being raped, including Homolka's own little sister.
You know, Nancy, it is such a difficult ethical issue.
Oh, please.
Well, when you're an attorney, you've sworn an oath, so you know you're obligated to protect your client no matter how heinous the client is. Now, if you hide evidence, you're breaking the law. But if you just know where it is and you shut your mouth, you really are doing your job. So sometimes you, as a defense attorney, hurt inside so badly that you just got to do your job. And you know what, Nancy?
It hurts, doesn't it, Daniel? It hurts.
It does, but we count on people like you, tough-nosed prosecutors, to find the evidence, and there has to be a balance.
Lord. You know, Daniel, how you turned that around on the prosecution, I admire that.
And complimented you also.
Yeah, you did. The sucking up is not going to help tonight. Here in the studio with me, Dr. Patricia Saunders. You know what? She got a free ride on this. She lured her own little sister. Catch this. She gave Ellie, wasn't it halcyon? She put in her sister's eggnog at Christmas. So the sister would be knocked out because her husband, co-defendant, wanted a virgin for Christmas. Well, he got one, and shortly thereafter, the sister started choking on her own vomit and died. Authorities didn't even realize this woman, you're looking at her, helped to drug and rape her own little sister. Now, you know what? Dr. Patricia Saunders, she got a light deal because of her looks and because she's a woman. I'm just telling you like it is, but I don't believe this guy brainwashed her.
Absolutely not, Nancy. She has gotten away with murder ×3 and then some. This woman is most likely a psychopath, a serial sexual predator. We don't like to think about women that way.
No, we don't.
About 1% of the population in this country are female psychopaths. Now, to give you an example of what a psychopath this woman is, she wrote a letter to her friend at the time of her wedding, saying she was really annoyed with her parents because they were selfishly grieving her sister's death, and they wouldn't give her enough money for her wedding and gave it to the funeral instead.
You know, don't you just hate that, Tim Danson, when your parents dare to spend their hard-earned money on your little sister's funeral after you helped kill her? Everybody, Tim Danson is the attorney for the victims' families. And, you know, I'm not hearing it from anybody else, but I am beside myself. 3 lives of schoolgirls, for Pete's sake. And the price, 12 years behind bars? Tim, how can you stand it?
Well, it's pretty shocking, and 30 million Canadians don't understand it either. And at this point, she's going to be released in the next couple of days. And the National Parole Board of Canada, that has unique experience and expertise in these matters, has told us that they feel that she represents a very serious threat to public safety, and more disconcerting is that it's their view that there's a high probability that she's going to reoffend. And a reoffending for Karla Homolka means, you know, another victim who will be raped and murdered, and this is something that's extremely disconcerting for all of us.
Well, we'll be right back with you, Tim. What's disconcerting to me is that she's right there on the border with 1 foot in the U.S. We at Nancy Grace want very much to help solve unsolved homicides, find missing people. Take a look at 13-year-old Brian Hayes. Brian disappeared from middle school, Jacksonville, Florida, Feb 10, 2005. If you have any info on this little boy, Brian Hayes, contact the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office 904-630-0500 or go online to beyondmissing.com. Please help us. Karla Homolka and her husband, Paul Bernard. Barbie and Ken, hey, it looks a little like Princess Diana's wedding, except these two are serial killers. Yeah, and she's about to get out from behind bars and walk free amongst us after just 12 short years behind bars. You know, she was furious at her wedding that her parents spent their money on her little sister's funeral. Little did they know at the time she walked down the aisle, she had a hand in her sister's drugging, rape, and murder. Only by turning state's evidence did she get this sweetheart deal. I say it wasn't worth it. The price tag was way too high. To the attorney for the victims, I'm sure they're reeling over her release, which is coming up next week. Tim Danson, again, thank you for being with us. Tim, it drives me crazy that a defense attorney sat on these videos of Homolka and her husband raping these little schoolgirls. The tapes finally were seen by you. What was on the videotapes? Why did these two serial killers feel they had to immortalize their murders?
Well, I think that's you know, they're psychopaths, they're sexual sadists. No human being should ever have to see or watch these videotapes. Unfortunately, members of the jury had to see these videotapes. The videotapes are graphic. They show the sexual violation, sadistic torture of these two young children. They do not show the murders, but they are searing, they are violent, they are shocking. And it shows you the brutality, as I say, that no human being should ever have to see. Paul Bernardo is on a number of occasions telling them that they're going to die, threatening death. But beyond that, there's really no words to describe it. These were two innocent children who were brutalized in a manner that's unimaginable.
And Tim, wouldn't they keep the girls for days on end, torturing them sexually, verbally, emotionally before killing them?
Certainly with respect to Kristen French, it was for a number of days. And this is one of the great problems that the families have. When the original plea bargain was made with Karla Homolka, they didn't have the videotapes, but they always said if they had the videotapes, they wouldn't have made the deal. Subsequent to the deal being made, one of the conditions was that Karla Homolka make full disclosure and be honest. But when we viewed the videotapes, we then saw that she had raped Jane Doe, her and Paul Bernardo. She claimed that this was part of post-traumatic stress disorder due to battered wife syndrome and that she had amnesia. At that point in time, we believed that, and still believe strongly, that that was the opportunity to go back on the plea resolution because she had breached it, as well as charge for Jane Doe.
Right.
But unfortunately, they felt that first of all, they bought into the battered wife syndrome and this amnesia, which I consider to be simply...
Wait, who is they?
Well, they had a team of experienced Crown prosecutors who believed in the expert evidence that Homolka's lawyers had put forward, that she was suffering amnesia from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, wait a minute. Question. Tim, didn't they kill Homolka's little sister? I think she was, what, Ellie, 14?
She was 15.
15 before the wedding?
That's correct.
Okay, hold on. Elizabeth, can you run that wedding video for me again? This is not a woman under fear of her life, battered women syndrome. Take a look at her partying hardy at her wedding. Oh, no. What about it, Dr. Saunders?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's really disgusting, Nancy. This woman is a psychopath. She is nobody's victim.
Now, wait a minute. Look at this horse-drawn carriage, and she's whining that her parents didn't spend enough on her wedding?
But that's the selfishness of the psychopath. Nothing matters except their needs.
To Tim Danson, again, you saw these videos. They're horrible, horrible, of these two raping and molesting two little girls before murdering them. And this one, Kathy Homolka, would lure the girls in. Didn't they? She drove up to one who was standing on the street, kind of lured her over to ask directions, and then the husband jumps out with a knife, and they put her in the car, and Homolka yanks her down by her hair to make her hide in the back seat, right?
That's what happened with respect to Kristen French, and it's important, again, from the family's perspective, and I think most people's perspective, is that Karla Homolka always played the role of the compliant victim. That's what she says. But it's interesting, in the medical reports, when Paul Bernardo inflicted physical harm on her dog, that was something that she was prepared to draw the line in the sand and stand up to him.
You're kidding.
In fact, and did stand up to him, but she wasn't able to stand up to him for her baby sister, her younger sister, and for Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. So she is the master at manipulation. The battered wife syndrome does not apply to her. She didn't strike out at the person who was allegedly battering her, but she struck out at two young, innocent children.
Well, I find it very difficult to believe, Daniel Horowitz, that this woman you're looking at had been brainwashed by her husband and forced to perform sex on her own sister on a video before killing her, before letting her die that way. Daniel, how could you have possibly strategically defended this woman?
Well, Nancy, I think that with people, we're much more complex than just battered women's syndrome. I think she is probably somebody who does look for abusive, battering men, and I'm sure she's battered herself. But we as a society may say, we're going to forgive you if you lash out against the abusing man, but we're going to draw the line, and if you also act out against innocent victims, and maybe with this woman she took some pleasure in it too because it gave her a sense of power, then the excuse no longer exists. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are women in our society who are abused, and when they strike back and finally stand up for themselves, we have to give them credit for that.
Daniel, what are you talking about, striking back and standing up for themselves? She helped kill 3 people. She molested them and tortured them. Take a listen to this.
Yes, well, Nancy, I know about power.
There was some very brutal, cowardly sexual assaults, attacking defenseless women from behind and just pummeling them and brutalizing them. At that point in time, there was only one scientist assigned to the center who was qualified to conduct these tests. And back then, you didn't get DNA results as quick as you do now.
To Alex Carnes with the Toronto Sun, is Homolka due back in court tomorrow?
Yes, she's seeking an injunction to prevent the media from reporting about her release, from tracking down her whereabouts, from reporting on her in any way, shape, or form. And I understand probably why, because while her first few years in prison, she set to all of her goals. She earned a BA. She did everything they asked for her. Over the last few years, her choice of relationships is rather strange. The first one is with a lesbian inmate, Linda Verino, and this smacks against everything that she said at trial, that she had no interest in women, that she wasn't a lesbian, and then she ends up in a lesbian relationship in prison. And her latest relationship is with convicted killer Jean-Paul Gerbet, who killed his girlfriend back in 1998. And Homolka has been writing letters back and forth with Gerbet, swapping photographs, underwear, things like that. And
whoa, 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 swapping underwear?
That's correct.
Man, she knows how to pick him, Alan. Alan, they seem like a normal couple, and they've been referred to as Barbie and Ken. What about this wedding extravaganza?
Well, the really scary part about the wedding is that it happened about a week after Paul Bernardo kidnapped Leslie Mahaffey, brought her back to the couple's home, and the pair of them are involved in the rape of Leslie, a videotape rape of Leslie. And then in a horrendous series of events, poor Leslie is killed, and her body is dismembered and put into concrete blocks, which are thrown in a lake nearby. And in fact, those body parts and the blocks were found on the same day as the wedding.
Take a listen to this.
I recognize that there may be problems with enforcing that part of the plea bargain once she's free. Then she has the same constitutional rights as anybody else.
Our position is no media interviews, no recounting of information, directly or indirectly, relating to the horrible crimes that she committed.
Dr. Patricia Saunders, you seem especially interested in her behind bars reading material.
Yes, she was reported to be reading a book called How to Disappear Completely and Never Be Found Again. God help us all that this woman is on the loose, because she's going to do it again.
You know, Paula Canny, it's amazing to me that this woman's only going to be supervised for 1 year, and she's already reading a book on how to disappear. I guess you know where, right here. She's probably walking down 3rd Avenue in Manhattan right now, Paula.
Well, I certainly hope not, at least for the 1 year while she's on parole. I don't think that she's going to be allowed to leave the the country of Canada or that province. And so, yeah, it's a short parole period, only a year. And going back to that 12-year plea bargain, I mean, I don't think that the prosecutors really thought through that in 12 short years, it's only, you know, 4 years for a person that she murdered. I mean, it is an unbelievably bad plea bargain. Bad.
Horrible. And they had plenty of evidence to take both of these guys down. Stay with us.
They absolutely did.
For active traders.
Oh, what a happy day. 2 demons marrying each other. These guys are serial killers, everybody. This is their wedding day. Yeah. 3 victims that we know of, including her little sister. Drugged, videoed during rape and torture, and murdered. And guess what? She got the bargain basement plea deal of 4 years per dead body. She's walking free next week. I wonder where she could possibly be headed. Maybe your town? Welcome back. I'm Nancy Grace. Thank you for being with us. Very quickly, back to Tim Danson, the attorney for the victim's family. You know, it's amazing to me that she actually is going to court, according to Alex and Alan, and asking that nobody report on her. How are we, the public, supposed to know where she is?
Well, it's pretty disturbing, but not surprising for Karla Homolka. I mean, as I was saying earlier, I mean, this is a person who represents a very serious threat to public safety and is a high risk of reoffending, and she's trying to turn the tables by making herself the victim. The other factor of all of this is that in Canada, like in the United States, we place a high premium on free speech and freedom of the press. And it's constitutionally protected here as it is in the United States. And the thought that someone like Karla Homolka would attempt to diminish those rights is rather objectionable, and I hope the court rejects it tomorrow.
Very quickly to Dr. Patricia Saunders, do you think there are other victims?
Yes, there are some reports that the sisters' friends are coming forth now that they too were drugged and raped.
Okay, Homolka to be released. She's in court tomorrow. We will update you on that. Switching gears very quickly, let's go to Gillette, Wyoming. Standing by, Shasta and Dylan.